everyone, it's Miss Smith here with a lesson about vocabulary. Here I have a quote from Jim Rohn, who was an entrepreneur. He started a lot of direct sales businesses and then eventually moved on to motivational speaking. He inspired people like Tony Robbins, who is a huge motivational speaker, and Jack Canfield, who wrote the Chicken Soup book series. His quote is, "Vocabulary enables us to interpret and to express. If you have a limited vocabulary, you will also have a limited vision and a limited future." We're going to start by talking about what a root word is. So roots are the basis of a word, and it typically does not stand alone. More than half of the words in the English language have Latin or Greek roots. This is especially true in content areas such as science and technology. Starting in 5th grade, students encounter about 10,000 new words in their reading. And learning about Greek and Latin root words will help you move more quickly to decipher the meanings of unfamiliar words, which is an effective strategy for word comprehension and vocabulary building. Here are some examples on the right. Now you'll notice right away that these are not words, again, that stand on their own. So if you're writing a story that includes Greek and Latin roots, that means that you're putting them in other words. They're not words by themselves. So M-A-R, right here, is a Greek and Latin root that means sea, S-E-A. So we see that in words like maritime or marine. We have the root omni, which means all. So, for example, in the word omnipotent, it means all-powerful, which is usually a way that you might see a god or a narrator in a book described. Omnivore means that they eat everything, because omni means all. So they eat both plants and they eat other animals. Nom means name, and we see that in words like homonym, which means H-O-M-O means same, N-Y-M is name. So homonym means that it's words with the same name. They might have the same pronunciation but different spellings and meanings, such as T-O, T-O-O, and T-W-O. Or words with both identical pronunciations and identical spellings but different meanings, such as quail, the bird, and quail, which means to cringe. Or they're words that are spelled alike but are different in pronunciation and meaning, such as the bow of a ship, B-O-W, and the bow that shoots arrows. Lastly here we have vor, which can mean to eat or swallow. So for example, omnivore, omna meaning all, and vor meaning eat, eats everything. Or voracious means that you've got a really big appetite. Next, a prefix is a letter group added in front of a root or base word that contributes to the meaning of the word. Knowing the meanings of common prefixes can help you determine the meanings of many unfamiliar words. You typically become familiar with some common prefixes in your vocabulary words before you are going to be taught these directly in class. So for example, when you're usually using the word un or the prefix un in words like unhappy before you're taught in class that un means not. Then you progress to more intermediate and advanced prefixes, including Latin and Greek roots, which we've talked about. So examples of prefixes are anti, which means against. So we see that in words like antisocial, or anti-gravity, or antibiotic, antidepressant, antifreeze. We see the prefix in here, which means not. So we see that in words like incorrect, inaccurate, inadequate, inability, and incomplete. We have the prefix co here as an example, which means with. So for example, co-worker are two people who work together. Co-pilot, cooperation, coexist, and cosine. Finally, as an example, we have extra, meaning more than. So extracurricular is more than what's in the curriculum. Extraordinary means just better than ordinary, or extraterrestrial means like outside of Earth. A suffix is a letter or group of letters added to the end of a word to change the form or the meaning of the word. Inflectional suffixes create different forms of the same word, and derivational suffixes usually change a word's meaning or the part of speech. Knowing the meanings of common derivational suffixes can help you determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. You typically become familiar with common suffixes in your vocabulary before you start studying them in school. Usually you will begin learning common suffixes first, such as full in the word helpful or beautiful. Then you progress to intermediate and advanced suffixes, including Latin and Greek roots, which is what we're working on today. Examples of suffixes include the IOUS suffix, which means characterized by. So for example, jealous means characterized by being like jealousy. Religious, characterized by religion, or ridiculous, characterized by ridicule. We also have the suffix al, which means pertaining to. So for example, fictional means pertaining to fiction. Regional, pertaining to a region. Musical, pertaining to music. Accidental and logical are other examples. Next, we have the suffix ity, which is the quality of. So for example, enormity is the quality of being enormous. Validity is the quality of being valid. Finally, as an example, we have the suffix ness, the state of being. So for example, sickness is the state of being sick. Heaviness, the state of being heavy. Highness, the state of being high. I wanted to introduce you to this term morphemes, which you might have learned in school possibly as word part clues, because this is also going to be helpful in your reading. They're units of language that hold meaning but cannot be broken down any further into smaller meaningful parts. So in chemistry or in science, I think of this as the atom of vocabulary. Two basic types of morphemes exist, bound and free. Bound morphemes cannot stand alone and must be attached to other morphemes to form a word, acting as the building blocks of a word. So for example, affixes, which is what, when you combine prefixes and suffixes as one word, both of those are combined are affixes. And Latin and Greek root words are bound morphemes because they cannot act as words on their own. You have to combine them with other word parts to make a word. Free morphemes, on the other hand, can stand alone. Free morphemes include English root words, such as the root word teach in teacher. So these are things that if you see them, you can't break them down any further, like teach, we cannot break down into parts, but it stands alone as a word, and it doesn't come from Latin or Greek. Two free morphemes can join to form a compound word. For example, dog is a free morpheme, house is a free morpheme, and we can combine them to make a compound word, doghouse. Here we have an example of a word that I might come across and be able to break up into morphemes in order to understand the meaning of the word. So first, I see a common prefix anti, which I know means against. Next, I see soci, which is S-O-C, comes from Latin, socialis, which means companionable, like friendly, or having to do with other people. And then we learned that the suffix al means pertaining to. Pertaining to. So altogether, antisocial means that you're against companionship. And then usually I take this part and I move it to the front of the definition. So antisocial means it pertains to being against socializing with other people, being against being companionable or friendly, or spending time with others. Next example, intersection. First, we have the prefix inter, which can mean between or together. We have the Latin root sect, which means a cut. And then we have the suffix shun, which means the state of being. So again, I'm going to kind of take this suffix definition and I'm going to pull it to the end, the beginning. So intersection, now it would say the state of being maybe cut together. The definition of intersection is a point or a line common to lines or surfaces that intersect. So a point at which two or more things come together. So they kind of cut together. It's the state of being cut together. Revision. Last example, we have re as our prefix, which means again. We have vis as our root here, which means see. And we have shun, which we know from our last example is the state of being. So revision comes from a definition that means the state of being seen again. When we revise something, we're looking at it again. So by pulling apart the morphemes or the small chunks of a word, we can figure out their meanings if they are bound morphemes instead of free morphemes, which we learned about in the previous slide. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know.